This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, my friend, and it's been a long weekend, but filled with action, a lot to talk about, and some cold weather up here in Charlotte.
Yeah, a little chance of some snow flurries today, but like you said, this weekend has been nuts. We knew it would be Friday when we did our show. The college football playoffs have been turned on its head, and the Panthers now are tied for first place.
They won a game in the bye week.
Yeah, during the bye week, they
won a game in the bye week.
The Saints, who didn't do us any favors a few weeks ago when they beat us, just did us a favor by beating Tampa Bay. We played the Saints in New Orleans this weekend. We'll get to that. We're going to start today, though, with the college football playoffs. Tim Brando from Fox Sports. You know Tim. He's been a mainstay on all of college athletics for, I think, probably 3 decades, doing college basketball, football. Probably one of the most well-versed guys in the business. And Frank and I worked with Tim back in the day on WFNZ, and he's going
to be opinionated for sure.
That's why I love him. He's not scared to give an opinion, and he's obviously as knowledgeable as anybody. So he's going to be joining us here in a few minutes. Let's start, and we'll get to Tim right when he joins us. But let's start with the big question of the day.
Is it? I see what you're wearing here. Is there that might be some sort of indicator. And I've been texting with you all weekend. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Are you sure you're going to make it?
I'm going to tell you. I was at a little bar in Matthews, North Carolina, watching the playoff show with a buddy. And when Notre Dame wasn't flipped on, after they make you wait 30 minutes to finally see who's in or out, when I saw that Notre Dame was out.
I was shocked.
That's more what it was.
I think you were kind of a pessimist going into it because I don't think you like to get hurt with what reality is maybe or what potentially could happen negative. So you've already prepared yourself. You had been screaming, Notre Dame isn't getting in. There's no way Notre Dame is going to screw us.
Wins.
They're going to screw us. They're going to screw us. If BYU wins, BYU lost.
Yep.
And I thought for sure Notre Dame.
Well, because the committee, the last 5 weeks, has had Notre Dame ahead of Miami every single week.
Yep.
So if BYU wins, then Notre Dame will be out. BYU will be in. Okay, whatever. When BYU loses, from what the committee has been saying all this time, there's no reason Miami should have jumped Notre Dame. Nothing happened in the last 2 weeks where Miami beat a good team or Notre Dame lost. Nothing happened to where Miami should have jumped them. And so that's where the confusion and why Notre Dame fans are upset. I was texting friend Nico, our buddy from Neogenics, about he asked me the same question, are you pissed? And I'm like, I'm really not. What really bothers me more than anything, and it's funny, when you're younger, things like this piss you off. It stays with you for days, and or Duke loses to Carolina, same kind of thing. When you get older, it doesn't stay with you nearly as long. And really, the thing that I'm missing the most is when Notre Dame's in the playoffs. I love watching the games with my kids and have people over, and Notre Dame games are where my boys and I during the playoffs in particular, and last year the national championship, where it's making memories with your kids, right? So that's what pisses me off the most, because now I really don't have a dog in the fight. Now I'm going to be pulling for Texas Tech just because I love their coach and I love the way that they do things. Other Ole Miss, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing, because I think it will be kind of a good story for them to lose their coach and then go on a run. But the other teams, I don't like Miami. Texas A&M, I do love their coach, so I wouldn't mind seeing them do well. But Oregon, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Indiana. Indiana would also be kind of a cool story.
I'm an Indiana fan.
Yeah,
I'm a Signetti fan. I'm a Mendoza fan, and I know that's something that we'll also get into. But it kind of sucks for what they just accomplished this last weekend, beating Ohio State in the fashion they beat them. They punched them. Nobody gave them a chance, including myself. I thought that they were the next group of 4 or 5 teams, and they proved to everybody in this country is that they belong.
Yeah. And
that coach can coach his ass off. And the sad part about their win is this college football playoff thing is overshadowing that. To be honest, and what's crazy about the predictions and the things that have taken place versus the reality of what happened. Is normally you can follow the money lines to kind of trace to see, what took place and why it took place. For example, ACC with Miami winning wasn't going to have a team representing them, and this is
with Duke winning.
With Duke winning the ACC, there's no way Duke was getting in. So this was not going to be one of those things that we could say that there's a reason why they didn't get in, but because of the way that things transpired, Notre Dame's out. It was more of a middle finger to Notre Dame than it was the ACC getting a team representing them.
Well, let's bring on now somebody who I know is going to have many opinions about this. We talked about him earlier in the show. Tim Brando from Fox Sports. If you grew up in Charlotte or in the South, you've seen him calling basketball games, football games for probably 3 decades at least, right?
Well, it's a little bit more than that. I don't know how long you've been around. But, my first year and my first big break came at ESPN with Dick Vitale, January 5th of 1985. So
wow.
It'll be 40 years.
Good for
My
you.
40th year is completed now, and I'll start year 41 with my my third network. And of course, Raycom Sports was with me through all of that until it stopped doing games. My last ACC tournament was 2019, but 37 years there. But all of that while, I was with ESPN from 85 to 94. I went to Turner for 3 years, did the Braves and Hawks and the playoffs with TNT and basketball. And of course, those great World Series teams with Ernie Johnson Sr. In the mid-90s. And then CBS from that was 1996 through 2013. And I've been with Fox for now 12 years. So I'm into my 5th decade now. So
well, Tim, you've seen so much, and before we get into the meat and potatoes of what's happened in college football recently, you've seen the innocence of college football when it was at its finest, the traditions, the rivalries, the Pac-10, the Pac-8, the Pac-12. You've seen how those conferences have grown, how the ACC has grown, how all these the innocence of college football, the innocence of amateur sports is gone. And I think we have a hard time believing that, especially guys in our 40s and 50s, because that's what we loved about amateur sports. But I don't think we can say that anymore, obviously.
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at it. I'll tell you that for you to believe that the innocence was there, you were incorrect. You were incorrect, but at least you had the feeling. There was this a willingness for those of us that have an idealistic view of life to believe that what's right about college athletics exceeds what's wrong with college athletics. And I think that's the way I'd summarize it. I think that's a better way of maybe looking at it, because the reality is people were being paid at a lot of places for a long time, but we just wanted to turn away from it and not see that. Now it's, you're incapable of seeing it. And I've got really no problem with players being paid. I've for a long time felt that they deserved a bigger piece of the pie. But like anything else that's happened in college athletic in recent years, it's been mismanaged or not managed at all. And that's the unfortunate part of everything that's transpired of late. And the adults in the room are the problem. It's not the players.
Right.
And the adults in the room that are governing the sport are not doing their jobs. And there's no leadership that we can point to. And there are times when fans get really upset with me. A lot of times I tell people I don't get paid for my opinions. I get paid to call ball. I think a lot of fans would prefer if I just called ball and kept my mouth shut about what's wrong. But I love the sport just like you do. I love all things college athletics. And even with the unseemly and maybe tawdry present that we're dealing in, I think that there are a lot of positives that are taking place. Some of these kids that are making some money need to make the money for their families. Some of these kids that are making money that necessarily don't need it are doing good things with the money and helping some of the disadvantaged that are in their neighborhoods or boys and girls clubs around town. I see examples of that all the time. But what has happened now that's really, really sad is that we have allowed, and the media is in large measure responsible for this too. We have now cornered ourselves into positions where we're taking care of ourselves to the best of our abilities and our corporations to the best of our abilities. And we're not doing as a group what we should be doing, and that is working together for the greater good of the sport. There's no reason why the folks that work at the company I work for, by example, and the folks that still work at ESPN where I began when it was a far different place than it is today, could not work together for the greater good of college athletics. But that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
College football, by example, college football had a real opportunity when they expanded the field to 12 teams. They had a real opportunity to put their postseason up for bids and allow all the networks to bid on the rights. And they didn't do that. They chose instead to keep the cronyism involved and make sure that the company that had not only purchased more than half of the bowls system, but the company that had, the greatest volume to just take it over and not even open it up for bids. If CBS and NBC and Turner and Fox were all involved in the playoffs for college football, they would, number one, make more money, and they would, number two, have more people across the board talking about it, just as the NFL does when they're in business with every media company in the country. College chose not to do that. So now you have one company that has a monopoly that does what is in the best interest for them moving forward, and that's fine. They've got it, so good for them. But it was never even put up for bid. There was no opportunity for any of the other networks to be involved. I've said for a long time we could have all these games played at convenient times. They wouldn't be putting these playoff games up against NFL games and NFL wildcard playoff games if more media companies were involved in the college football playoff. And that's just the truth. That's just a media fact. And as a result, what we have seen over time with the playoff now is by expanding it from 4 to 12, they haven't done anything other than piss more people off.
Right.
Instead of just having one or two teams upset, you've got 4 or 5 upset. You've got a system by which the company that has the rights has the metrics that they can put in place that can be awfully convenient for them and the partners that they spend their most money with.
Yep.
Hence the fact that the SEC is going to make $20 million because 5 teams are in, each getting 4 that they can share among their membership. The ACC gets 1, and that's not even an automatic qualifier. That's an at-large, which in my mind is only in there because Miami is a member of the ACC, and Notre Dame, were it a full member, probably would have been in, but because they're not in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. That's what's taking place here.
Yeah.
And for anyone to believe otherwise, you're totally naive to everything about the business of big-time college athletics. That's what's going on here. And it's fundamentally wrong. And for anyone not to see that is to just be naive or biased, one or the other. And bias is ruling the day. Alabama, by example, people today are talking about, Notre Dame got screwed by Miami. No, they didn't. No. Miami didn't screw Notre Dame. The SEC and Alabama screwed Notre Dame. Miami couldn't even get past Notre Dame in the college football playoff standings.
Exactly.
Before Alabama did. Alabama got put ahead of Notre Dame in the second to last college football standings show. That Tuesday night, when they moved Alabama up above Notre Dame after a near loss at 4-8 Auburn, that was protection for Alabama so that they could understand going in full well that if they laid an egg against Georgia, they wouldn't be penalized for merely getting into the SEC championship. So it didn't matter how bad they looked on the field. They were going to be in. Miami, on the other hand, was going to have to hope and pray that Virginia took care of Duke. And if they didn't, then they weren't going to get in because Miami was going to get in over them simply because ESPN pays the ACC. They have a deal with the ACC. They don't have a deal with Notre Dame. Notre Dame gets to keep all that cash, and they kept it all last year. And I think, in my view, they were getting their comeuppance from the company that owns the rights to the college football playoff. Notre Dame chose not to be a part of the CFA when they cut their own deal with NBC 35 years ago. and they've been saving their money and not sharing it with anybody for a long, long time. And if you don't think that's part of why things happened the way they did yesterday, then you're on another planet.
Yeah, I think you're totally right because, as you mentioned, Miami was behind Notre Dame all 5 weeks in the standings. All 5 weeks. And nothing happened in the past 2 weeks that should have caused Miami to leapfrog them. Matter of fact, when Boise State won their championship against UNLV, that should have helped Notre Dame a little bit because they had whooped Boise State during the season. And so I totally agree with you. And I told Frank I thought that you were not on the same page on this, but we couldn't be more on the same page on this.
So
I am a Notre Dame fan, so I'll be transparent.
So where does Notre Dame go from here? Where does the ACC go from here? Because this is kind of the big middle finger to Notre Dame, which he just very eloquently explained, and I agree. Now that we know where the trace of the money's going, back to the ESPN and the ACC, what does Notre Dame do now?
Well, they've got a couple of choices. They can either be hard-headed about it and say, you know what, we're doing just fine economically, so we'll get past this. Guess what? They've already done something. They said no to their glorified exhibition in Florida on New Year's Day. The hell with you. We're not going to drive your ratings up for your Citrus Bowl. Okay, forget that. We're not going to take part in it. And oh, by the way, they've got a lot of company, 3 teams I know of out of the Big 12 that's also been spurned. That league deserved at least 2 teams to get in. BYU, as Kalani Sitake said, we just want to be on the graphic. Well, he didn't even make the graphic.
Right.
But BYU was penalized for its showing against Texas Tech, but Alabama wasn't penalized, and their showing against Georgia was a hell of a lot worse in my mind than BYU. By the way, BYU's only losses were to, I think, maybe one of, if not the best team in the country, Texas Tech. And I think that'll be proven over the weeks ahead in the college football playoff. I think they could shock the world. If Indiana doesn't, then they will. They're that good. But BYU is in the Mountain Time Zone. They're in the Big 12, but they lost to the best team.
Yeah.
That's not the case with Alabama. They lost to a horrible Florida State team to start the season. They lost to a bad, by SEC standards, Auburn team who fumbled the game away, otherwise would have beaten them. So much so that their coach, Kalen DeBoer, was on the firing line. If that game, by the way, Lane Kiffin waited for one reason and one reason only to Sunday. He knew if Alabama lost, that job was going to come open. And guess what, Baton Rouge? You wouldn't have gotten him. He would have gone to Alabama rather than LSU. I mean, that's just a fact of the matter as well. Jimmy Sexton is like a puppeteer, okay? He's in charge of all things SEC, and rightfully so. When there's cover provided by some of his clients on television, that's part of it too.
Yeah, that's
part
true.
of it too.
That's true. And the other thing that's been thrown out there as far as Notre Dame goes, and we'll dive into some of these other games in a minute, is that maybe they're going to sue the ACC to get out. I saw this morning their athletic director was on with Dan Patrick, and he said that the ACC has done permanent damage to the relationship now with what they've done. And so do you think that's a route they might take to try to just get out of the ACC in general? And if that happens, do you think teams like Clemson and Florida State, who have been on record over the past few years of trying to get out as well, follow?
Well, Bavacqua is an old television guy too now, a little bit like Tony Petitti. He once worked at NBC, so he knows the inner workings of the television deals. But I would say to him that the issue here is not the ACC. It's it's the company that he chose not to be a part of, and Notre Dame chose not to be a part of years ago when they seceded from the union and struck their own deal with NBC, the very network that he worked at. So, again, we got to remember where these people all were. Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, gets a lot of credit for having been at CBS and before that ABC when he helped Roy Kramer start the BCS as a young executive in the 90s. But Tony is a TV guy, and he's taken a lot of heat, number one, for not being accessible to the media quite as much as Greg Sankey. But also, I think he's taken a lot of heat because he's the guy that came out with, we need to eliminate the at-large selections and get more automatic qualifiers. He tried to convince Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark to be with him on the 4-4-2-2-1-1 deal, where teams would basically have a playoff within their leagues to earn those bids. And they took exception to the fact that he felt the SEC and the Big Ten should get 4, and both of those should take 2. Would you rather be where the ACC and the Big 12 are now, or have the guarantee of having two of your teams in. I think Tony had a pretty good idea.
Think
Why
so,
the
too.
ACC and the Big 12 didn't see that, I don't know. A lot of this is about hubris. It's about wanting to be in charge and taking care of your own constituents. It gets back to that greater problem that we've always had. Whether I worked at CBS or at ESPN, even in the early days when Beano Cook and Lee Corso with me were with me on the original Game Day, I was screaming from the top of my lungs, college football needs a czar. We need someone that is the ultimate soothsayer for all things college football. Instead, we have four men in charge of the power leagues that all want to take care of their constituents, their presidents of their universities, and no one's thinking about the big picture of the sport. And that's where the bottom line to me of all these issues really lies. And for them not to see that, these are reasonably intelligent, good men. I know them all. I respect them all. But when I see missteps, I'm going to point them out. Greg Sankey was not happy with me when I said what I did a few years ago about them not going to 9 games. Now, I thought finally they've done it. Yeah. But Greg Sankey was lying to people in the media about going to 9 when the presidents of the institutions were not going to allow it. They felt like, hey, the metrics are with us, even though we're only playing 8 games. Why should we change? Well, finally, they decided to go to 9 games. And I think that was in many ways because it looked at that time as though the Big Ten and the SEC might have been coming together and beginning to agree on a few things. When Warren was the commissioner of that league, they didn't even talk. But Sankey has been disingenuous too. I mean, he goes on Game Day and filibusters 2 years ago to make sure Florida State got screwed when they were undefeated and 13-0 to get Alabama in that year.
Yeah.
Okay. And Alabama paid the price last year because the committee was like so concerned that if they didn't take care of somebody besides the SEC, they were going to get hammered. They decided to put SMU in the thing after its performance against Clemson.
Yeah.
And Alabama was left out. So you had to know this year they were going to take care of the Crimson Tide, and they did.
Right.
But I believe it's Alabama's insertion with 3 losses, and a couple of those losses are bad, really bad losses. Okay.
Yeah.
And really BYU's were to one of the best teams in the country. That's the only loss they had. They had it twice. And I'm not saying they necessarily deserve to be in, but my God, they deserve the graphic. They deserve 100%. Consideration, and they don't get it. And the reason is the almighty SEC must be taken care of first, and they got their 5 teams in. And hell, Sankey was saying yesterday on Saturday, I should say, we ought to get 7 in. He wanted Texas and Vanderbilt in too.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's got that much hubris. He's got that much built up in his chest that he believes he's all powerful, and he was powerful enough to get Bama in, but evidently not quite powerful enough to get Vandy and Texas in, who I would argue are both playing better right now than Alabama.
100%.
Even though Vandy lost to Alabama earlier in the year. Kirk Herbstreit was right yesterday in the game, a meaningless conference championship game. He said Alabama's leaking oil. They're not the team that was playing as well as they were in mid to late October and early November. That should count for something. None of these conference championship games need to be ruled out. We need to get rid of them. We need to go to 16, and I think we need to adopt the play-in category for the playoffs, where the top teams in the Big Ten and the SEC are playing meaningful games, not just 2 teams playing in a meaningless conference title game, but meaningful games to get into the playoffs. And then let's make sure that we get the right teams in and try to get the committee out of the decision-making process as much as we possibly can.
Well, Tim, couldn't the committee have saved a little bit of face at least, instead of creating this pissing contest between conferences, the SEC and the ACC, allowing both Miami and Notre Dame, and maybe, hell, even a Texas or a BYU, if they just eliminate Tulane and JMU, get rid of them. They're not.
Can't do it.
They weren't the best teams. I know what they said.
Those were the rules. That's low.
I know those are the rules, but
yeah, that's low hanging fruit. And you know what? It is easy for us to pile on the group of 6 teams. Okay, but you know what? Those teams have pressure to win every week, If they don't go undefeated or just have one loss, now this year was a bit of an anomaly because you do have a 2-loss team representing. Okay, Tulane did lose 2 games, but they at least played quality opponents. I mean, they did go to Ole Miss. They're going to have to play them again. But, I think, that's on the ACC. Okay, let's not blame Tulane and JMU for the opportunity of a lifetime. College football, the power conferences could not schedule a full slate of games for television to carry, if not for those teams in the group of 6, or what used to be known as the group of 5. I hear what you're saying. Okay, and I understand it from a football man's perspective, how you'd feel that way. But them's the rules, baby. Them's the rules. And that's something that you decided on. This system was flawed from the very jump. It was flawed from the top. And I think that people that are bringing that up today are just looking for the low-hanging fruit, and they don't understand how college football has governed itself. We've been pissing down the legs of the group of 5 and group of 6 teams forever. I don't know how many times Boise State had to be a quality team, and yet people rained on their parade every year. It's the only sport where Cinderella is looked down upon year after year after year. College athletics needs that. You were talking about what we loved about it. Okay, well, amateurism is gone, but I think a player like Ashton Gente, who is a one-of-a-kind player, by the way, some of these power teams are going to get guys. There is no Indiana without JMU. There is no Indiana without what James Madison had under Kurt Cignetti. So a lot of good things have happened at some of those schools. I just think it's inappropriate. I'll put it that way. Inappropriate for people that are in college athletics today to even suggest that let's just get those 2 out. No, I'm sorry. Those are the rules. You made them, and those teams went out with pressure, unlike the pressure of teams like Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, and other brands that know they can get away with losing a couple of games and still get in. Hell, in Alabama's case, they could lose 3 and look bad in all of them.
Yeah.
So,
Tim, let me ask you this about that, because with all the rules that are in place now, and I know that next year, for instance, I know that with the ACC it changes, because I know if Duke would beat Virginia next year, even though with 5 losses, they would have gotten in next year with the way that the rules change. When is the opportunity or these contracts where they can go in and try to make changes? And who knows who the hell they are? And the people that are changing these rules are probably the same ones that made the ones in the first place. But is there an opportunity in the near future where they can try to get this right? Because I'll tell you this, I'll be very surprised if somebody doesn't at least address some of the scheduling that we've seen moving forward, as far as when the portal opens and coaches leaving after, I would think that would be addressed.
I mean, it's a complete dumpster fire. It's a complete dumpster fire. Why these people that are in governance have allowed, why they do it? The leaders of the conferences want to have someone for the fans to blame other than them. Okay. Yeah. So they allow the NCAA to sanction bowl games. All right. They allow the NCAA to set portal dates, set national signing day. And all the NCAA does is undermine their sport, their coaches and their players, by the dates they set, because they're looking for a fall guy. They want fans. It's funny. I wouldn't have had an opportunity in 1985 to go to ESPN and be a part of college football, starting on the sidelines in the fall of '86 and then hosting game day in '87, if not for the Supreme Court ruling against the NCAA that they could no longer control television rights for college football. That was when the CFA was born. That was when ESPN got games, live college football games, that they could put on the air. They were on the air in 1979, but did not have live college football games until the fall of 1985. Not until the fall of 1985. Wow. And in 1986, the CFA was born, College Football Association, ACC, SEC, what was then the Big Eight, and the WAC, and I'm trying to think of the other conferences out west that were all part of it, the PCAA. All these conferences were part of it. The only 2 that were not in the College Football Association, that was run by Chuck Ninus, the former Big Eight commissioner, were the Pac-8 and the Big Ten at that time. Okay, everybody else, and Notre Dame was part of the College Football Association. So they were all married in together. Without that, ESPN's boom, college football controlling its own television rights allowed for the CFA to exist. And then the schools got greedy and they decided, you know what? Why don't we just break away from the CFA? Notre Dame just made a deal with NBC. Let's all join forces and have our own TV deals, CBS with the SEC, the ACC with ABC, and so on and so forth. So the conferences started taking on. All of this became a reality only after the Supreme Court ruled against the NCAA. So since that time, the National Collegiate Athletic Association has done nothing but make it more uncomfortable for college football to do its job and to continue to operate the way they need to. And yet, none of the presidents of any of the schools that are involved in college football want the NCAA to go away. And the reason is because they want a fall guy. Yeah. They want somebody else to blame.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. I mean, we have to answer your question about what's going to happen, what are these conferences going to do? I think they have to galvanize and say, this system sucks out loud. We have to go to 16. We have to have a format that limits the committee or banishes the committee. I'd love to see the committee gone entirely. Let's allow the computers, several computers. You know, the BCS wasn't, when you think about it, in terms of determining who really deserved to go, it was a hell of a lot more equitable to me than this godforsaken committee that has people on it that we know are connected to all these different institutions. Check how many people have Alabama ties that are on that committee. Either they're from Alabama, they went to school at Alabama, or they were a part of the SEC and worked at some point in time at Alabama. Ivan Mizell, the only media member, grew up in Mobile, Alabama, for crying out loud. I mean, it's over the top. It's over the top. If people took a closer look at this, they'd see exactly what I'm talking about. But again, they choose not to. And because ESPN has the monopoly on the postseason, they'll cover what they want to cover. Okay. They don't necessarily have to cover that's there. And because they are such a mammoth Goliath organization and control most of the inventory of college football, a lot of the fans really just don't know what they don't know. Well, and that's just part of it.
You know, it's funny. I'm learning so much about it feels like I've been watching The Wizard of Oz, and I just discovered who was behind the curtain. Yeah. And that's, you know, because a guy that's so knowledgeable about the sport has just pulled it back and exposed. I can see why these guys don't want you talking. We can sit here and talk for days about.
You mean you understand now why Feinbaum can't have me on his show?
Yeah, that's right. he went to Alabama. He has some connection with Alabama too.
Greg Sankey did not want me on his airwaves talking about what's transpiring here with college football's postseason.
Absolutely. We can sit here and talk for days about the negative things wrong with college football. Yeah. But there are also so many great things that are being overshadowed, like the win against Indiana winning.
Oh my God!
I mean, what a! I got goosebumps still watching Cignetti and Fernando Mendoza talking after the game how crazy he was. I mean, how good is Indiana, and how great was that win for not just college football, but for the state of Indiana and what Cignetti's done there?
I'm thinking about some of the greatest hires in the history of college football. Okay. And I'll throw this out, see if you guys agree. All right. In the last, post-World War II era of college football. So I'll go that far back. Yeah. Post-World War II era of college football. Some of I think of maybe, can I get a handful of great hires in the history of the sport? Well, I've been around long enough to remember some. Some were big, but the sport was more regional at that period of time. I think in the 90s, after the cable boom, Game Day had been on the air at this point, maybe 5 or 6 years. And the hire that Duke made of Steve Spurrier when Ben Bennett was a first-team All-America quarterback and won, Duke won its first title since that year, the 1989 season. And, the ACC at that time was really beginning to kind of cook a little bit. Bobby Ross had gone to Georgia Tech. George Welch at Virginia had a really good team. Those teams would be 1 and 2 in 1990. But in 89, Duke won the ACC title. Now it was different then. There were only 8 teams in the conference, but then an even better hire came after that when Spurrier went to Florida. Florida had never won a title at all, and he took the fun and gun to Gainesville. And in my mind, after Bear Bryant and obviously Saban because of his run of national titles, there's no question in my mind Steve Spurrier is the next face that goes on the SEC Mount Rushmore. I mean, he was the guy. He changed the game.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, everyone had to pivot defensively after what Steve was doing. But since that time, I don't know of a greater hire in college football than Curt Cignetti from James Madison to Indiana. Now, look, we did have the portal in play at this point, but again, generationally, okay, those are the rules. You can do this. He brings what used to be called Division I AA when I was doing FCS games in the 80s. But he takes a team, James Madison, the core of that team, 30 or so guys, into the Big Ten and goes undefeated and makes it to the college football playoff in year 1.
Yeah.
With a quarterback that is the Big Ten player of the year that had been playing at the FCS level the year before.
Yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
Now, what does he do if after year 1, the Big Ten player of the year, Curtis Rorson, is gone, and he improves his quarterback position by getting a quarterback that Cal had that no one on the East Coast had ever even thought about, even dreamed of. Fernando Mendoza was a step above the Big Ten player of the year at the quarterback position. And he had, yes, some of those guys remaining, but he had to supplant some of the seniors that left him with portal players, and he did not miss on one of them. They're all great players. Surratt, the receiving corps alone, Cooper, Surratt, and Becker are 3 of the best wide receivers that you'll find on a team. And that defense, led by Aiden Fisher, the linebacker, they're never out of position. Those guys are always in position. So that to me is maybe the great in my lifetime. Okay, and I consider the change in the eras. I consider that the portal is in play and we're now paying players and you can bring as many transfers as you want. Coaches can bring them with him. Nobody's done it like this guy. Curt Cignetti, to me, is the greatest hire of the modern era of college football beyond a shadow of a doubt. And anyone thinking their performance last year in the playoff was going to be indicative of what that team had been all year in the Big Ten and now showed against Ohio State, mighty Ohio State, that was ranked number 1 basically all year. In my own top 15 that I do weekly, I had Indiana number 1 after they beat Oregon at Oregon. I thought they were the best team in the country at that point. And even though Penn State pushed them, look, that was an angry Penn State team.
Sure was.
They were playing loose, and Indiana had all the pressure on them. And that drive Mendoza made at the end of that game, look, I'm a Heisman voter, have been for 30 years. I'm not supposed to tell you who I voted for, but you tell me of a better Heisman moment than that drive Mendoza made with their season on the line. I mean, wow.
Yeah, if that wasn't good enough, what he did this weekend, I mean, that should have solidified the whole deal.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about one other coaching thing. This is a debate that we were having with some buddies of ours. Another coaching deal with Lane Kiffin going to LSU. How long? And you're there. You're still in Louisiana, right? So that's your neck of the woods. And
I live in Shreveport, but my career really began in Baton Rouge and New Orleans. Yes.
Right. So you're tied in as well as anyone. How long does it take Kiffin to win and be make the playoffs and maybe even a national title? Do you think he can, with the recruits he's already looks like he's getting, with the money that they're going to be giving him? He's obviously a brilliant offensive mind. How long does it take him to get LSU in the playoffs and really into the national championship?
It'll take about as long as it will for him to burn out and leave for the Alabama job when Kalen DeBoer gets fired.
Wow, you think that'll happen? I know there's a lot of people that says it will.
Well, I mean, why do you think he waited until Sunday to make his decision?
Yeah, it's true.
If Kalen DeBoer had lost that game to Auburn, the wheels were in place. I'm telling you, they were in place. Kiffin knew it because Sexton is his agent.
Yeah.
And of course, they were leaking oil, but Kalen kept his job. Well, they'll be on his case and ready to run him out on a rail the moment he gets blown out in the college football playoff, which I think is a distinct possibility. I like Lane Kiffin a lot. I do. I just always even when he was the villain at Tennessee, going to
Yeah.
USC, I liked him. He's really impossible not to like once you engage with him and you get to know him. But he's troubled in many, many ways. He's always been troubled in that he can't help himself from himself. And one of the great embarrassments, I think, for ESPN over this whole deal with him is that fluff hour-long documentary that he decided to do about his changing image and how Ole Miss did more for him than he could ever do for them, all the while with wheels turning, knowing that if the opportunity to leave to go to LSU was there, he was going to take it. My God, did you guys ever see that documentary?
I did. Yeah.
I mean, what an embarrassment.
Yeah.
That's one that they should put on ice in their archives at ESPN. I don't know if they were going to submit it for an Emmy, but if they were, they probably aren't now.
Yeah, no doubt.
But the bottom line is Lane is a chaser. And I think any one of us that's in the workplace, especially the performance workplace, God knows I've been there. I talked about all my years in the business, but it took 4 stops for me to stay in this business this long.
Right.
Although I've had some long stints, 18 years at CBS was a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm loving being in my 12th year at Fox. I do see the finish line there. But you always have to have your head on a swivel. But I think in any profession that's performance-based, you're always looking, because an AD could come in or a president could come in. It could cost you your job. But Lane has not gotten rid of that disease.
Yeah.
He's not. And to leave a team, I don't know about you guys, but to be this close to a national championship and to walk away with, you're 3 games away. You're hosting a playoff game. You've made history at Ole Miss. And to walk away, and he had to know that they were not going to let him coach. You're not going to be able to go to a rival school and keep that job. Anyone thinking that Keith Carter made a poor decision? No, that was the only decision that AD could make.
Agreed.
The only decision he could make.
That's right.
And I think Pete Golding will do a great job. Hey, wake up the echoes of Steve Fisher when he took over for Bill Frieder. Bo Schembechler said, "I'm not going to let an Arizona man, an Arizona State man, coach a Michigan team." That's what Ole Miss did. And I think they're a scary team. I love their draw. I think if they take care of Tulane and then play in New Orleans against Georgia in a rematch, I saw that first game.
Yeah.
And as long as Charlie Weiss is back there calling those plays for Trinidad Chambliss, I think they're dangerous. I think they're very dangerous.
Yeah,
but that's the thing with Lane. Lane can't get out of his own way. And I know the people down in Louisiana believe they scooped everybody by getting him. And, ha, 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 Florida, you didn't get your guy. And Ole Miss, ha, 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 you're our rival. We got your guy. But the reality is that was a $200 million package to get his players, and his assistant coaches. They still have to pay $54 million to Brian Kelly. They will still be paying off their debts when he leaves to go to Alabama or someplace else. If not Alabama, he'll go to the NFL because Lane is just one of those guys that will never be comfortable. He'll never be completely happy. And I think that's one of the reasons why Saban mentored him. And here's another fact maybe you haven't thought about. I think Nick Saban coerced LSU and Lane Kiffin to come together because the first call LSU's people made was to Nick.
Right.
And once his wife and he, once he told his wife, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm going to stay where I am."
Yeah.
I think she wanted him to take the job. But once he didn't take the job, he said he would do everything in his power to get them their guy. And I think he did. Now he has to play it cool on the air because of the position he's in. But the reality is he's a Sexton guy too. So he knew if he could get Lane there, that it would take some of those bad feelings that LSU has had about Nick all these years for leaving and then ultimately winding up at their rival, Alabama. Now, the difference was obviously Nick had Wayne Huizenga on a tarmac in Baton Rouge in 2004 waiting for him. And that tugged at him too. Nick was chasing. He was chasing rainbows. And so he had an understanding of maybe what Kiffin was going through. But that still won't stop him from wanting that Alabama job. And ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen. If you want it that badly, if you sell your soul, and I think LSU did, then don't be surprised if you get burned in the end. And I think ultimately that's going to happen. The reality is he became the biggest villain in college football, and LSU will be the most hated team in Division I college football, particularly if Ole Miss gets bounced early,
Right.
and especially if Ole Miss gets hot and rolls all the way to the national. And you know what else is really stupid? And this is true. LSU is on the hook to pay Kiffin an additional $1 million bonus if Ole Miss wins the national championship.
I did not know that.
Ole Miss doesn't have to pay it. LSU does.
Wow. I didn't know that.
The power of Jimmy Sexton strikes again.
Well, you just said something right there. He seems to be the puppet master controlling college football right now.
Especially in the South.
Especially in the South.
Yeah.
I mean, to have that type of power, to be able to control.
I should have been a damn agent. I knew it. I would have been able to make it through all the school. So I would have been able to make it through the school. Tim, with the playoffs, starting here in a couple of weeks, you mentioned Ole Miss, and you think they've got a good chance and a good road to maybe.
I love their draw. I just like their draw.
Yeah, I do too. What other teams are you looking at that you think that, like, if you were to make your prediction now, like, what do you?
We don't get to see a lot of Oregon out here, and I'm a big believer that they have the talent to compete against everybody,
right?
With their offense. Defensively, they're not Ohio State and I didn't even know that Indiana was as good as they were on defense. The number 2 team in the country.
Yeah,
you've seen them religiously. I knew how good Cignetti was, but they were the best coach team in college football. And Oregon took them. I know Indiana won by 10, but that was a 3-point game going on until like the last 3-4 minutes of that game.
Frank won a national championship in Washington, so. He's got a little of that.
Oregon has all that. Oregon has all that money.
Yeah.
Oregon has all that money. They could compete.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, you played with if you were at UW when they won that title, then my old broadcast partner from CBS, Ed Cunningham, was.
Oh yeah, Ed's a great guy.
He's a Academy Award winner now.
Yeah, too. I heard that. I congratulated him a couple of years ago by doing that. So
good man.
So he was the guy right before me, but he was my mentor. He was like my big brother.
Yeah, well, he went from about this big to like that big when he got him on television. He did the Bill Curry. He shrunk. He shrunk when it came to television. But but the thing with the draw, I think the draw is important, and I love the fact that Indiana did move into the 1 position because they get to go to the Rose Bowl.
Right.
Okay. And there's no way you're going to lay an egg as a Big Ten team in the Rose Bowl. Okay. Yeah. This will wake up so many echoes. Get ready. They're going to be going on and on about the last time Indiana was in a Rose Bowl. John Punt was the coach, 1967. Wow. I was 11 years old. I remember it vividly. I grew up on college football, and I may have been from the South, but I loved it all. I mean, I watched everything. I knew I wanted to be a sportscaster from the time I was 6 years old. I was born into a broadcasting family. My dad was on TV and radio after World War II in my hometown. And so I watched it all, and I wanted to be the next Kurt Gowdy. That's what I wanted to do. So and Gowdy was doing those games on NBC way back in the day. So you're going to be hearing a lot about that. They'll be waking up the echoes of Lee Corso's Holiday Bowl victory. So much goodwill from the olden days at Indiana. And, they had moments. Bill Mallory had a really good program there for a period of time. It's not like they've been horrible, but they've never been it. Indiana is now it for the very first time in their history. And I love Indiana to go the distance. Now, the other team that I would also favor here is Texas Tech because of the big-time chip that they have on their shoulder. Mm-hmm. They are tired of hearing, and commentators did this, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's just easy to pick on teams that aren't in the SEC, that aren't the brand names. And, okay, Texas Tech has the biggest bankroll of any team. They spent more money than any team. And you know what? All that has done is energize the players because I did 2 of their games this year, and they're the nicest guys, and they care about one another big time. When Joey McGuire says my guys love one another, he's telling the truth.
By the way, I think Joey McGuire is I'm a big Notre Dame fan, so I love Marcus Freeman.
Right.
I love Signetti, but I think
Yeah.
Joey McGuire might be my third favorite coach
Yeah.
in football. He makes me
And
want to run
yeah.
through a wall every time I see him
Yeah.
talk.
And his first couple of years, guys were coming in calling his games, calling him High School Harry. Okay.
Yeah.
No coach likes to hear a commentator call him High School Harry.
Yeah.
And that really got under his skin, and players knew it too. They only lost the one game to Arizona State when Baron Martin, their starting quarterback, was out, couldn't play.
Mhm.
And by the way, the kid that came in to back him up, Will Hammond, he's out now with an Achilles and out for the year. But he helped them win that game at Utah when
Right.
Baron got hurt in that game, and then did his best, but also got hurt in that loss at Arizona State and was out for the year. But Baron Morton has been just tremendous since he returned. And that defense, not just Rodriguez, who, by the way, I believe will be in New York. I don't think he'll win it, but I think Jacob Rodriguez deserves to be in New York for the Heisman
I
ceremony.
agree.
He's that good. He is that good. I think that team is going to play with a level of vindictiveness towards being an outlier that crashed the party, even though they've got an open date, and even though they are playing, out of the top four positions. I wish they could have had a home game.
Yeah.
But still, I think that team, even with a week off, is going to be very dangerous. So I like the Texas Tech draw. And my outlier, fellas, as I said before, I love the Ole Miss draw. I just think if you had to tell them from a preparation standpoint with all they've been through, best thing that could happen to Pete Golding when he's now having to wear the hat of not just defensive coordinator but also head coach is to play a team they've already played and beaten,
100%.
like Tulane. And then to play Georgia, a team that they had on the ropes, led by 9 points
In
to
the
start
fourth
the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
All that happened in that game was Georgia, Mike Bobo decided to pound the rock and make an Ole Miss defense that was really good in its starting lineup but lacked depth, make them stay on the field.
Mhm.
And they instead of having quick drives, they had longer drives, and they kept the Ole Miss defense on the field. And then a couple of 3-and-outs occurred to Ole Miss's offense after they had scored on their first 7 possessions. I mean, my God, when you score on every possession
Against
you got
Georgia.
control of the game against
In
Georgia,
Georgia,
yeah, at Athens.
At Athens.
So I love that. I think the game that a lot of people are pointing to open the week, the big game, is the Oklahoma-Alabama game. People are thinking that that's going to be a great matchup. I don't think it will be. I think Oklahoma's going to spank them, and I think they outplayed them at Bama. The
Yeah.
last time Oklahoma had them at home, they knocked Alabama out of the college football playoff by beating them last year with a losing record, really.
Yeah.
They knocked them out. So I think this is a great opportunity for Oklahoma to end it quickly for Alabama. So that'll be the game that's most talked about going into the
Right.
first round. But those are my 3 choices. I think, one, I'm going to go Indiana. I think they're that good. I
Yeah.
think Ohio State's in some trouble because they've got to be asking questions of themselves again.
Mhm.
Last year after losing to Michigan, they were able to use that juice, turn it into a chip, feel like underdogs. Well, I think instead of feeling like underdogs with Indiana, I think they're just flat out embarrassed. This
Right.
team. They're flat out embarrassed. And that's a little harder to come back from. I think Ryan Day's job is going to be a lot more difficult. To your point, Oregon, without a doubt, Dan Lanning's a hell of a coach. That team is really, really good. But I think Dante Moore is a year away. In a big playoff game scenario, I think Dante Moore with one more year of experience, I would roll with the dice on Oregon. I had Oregon last year,
Mhm.
but when they had Dylan Gabriel, and you saw what happened, they just got a horrible draw.
Yeah.
To have to play Ohio State a second time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that would have been their year. But those are my choices. I like, in order, Indiana, Texas Tech, and my upset Cinderella story, if you will, because of the draw, would be Ole Miss.
So, first of all, thanks again for joining us and taking the time.
Listen,
You're
I've
great.
been-
And, I mean, not only are we getting some education, but just the
I'm
storytelling.
going to be a lot smarter now talking against you.
100%. Yeah, exactly. But I want to ask you 2 things for you. First of all,
Right.
you've been in every stadium you can imagine when it comes to college football and college basketball. We always argue here being in the South, and I've been to a lot of the SEC games, ACC. I've been to Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State. To me, the loudest stadium I've ever been into, and to me it's not even close, has been Tennessee. and I saw Tennessee when they beat Florida with Spurrier and all those
Mhm.
games. What's the loudest stadium you've ever called a game in where literally while you're calling the game, you and your partner are having a hard time even hearing each other?
You know, that's a great question, and I've ranked my top 5 all-time stadiums in the past. I did it in a sporting news book that was put out years ago, and I actually Keith Jackson wrote the foreword for it, but I wrote the introduction, so I was really honored.
Nice.
Sporting News was putting the book out, and I was doing a radio show at that time that they were in the radio business, so they allowed me to do that. Uh, Knoxville is clearly top 5, and without question, deserving of number 1 if you're going to say all day parts. If you
Right.
say daytime and nighttime. But I have to go with a little homerism if you're saying loudest ever.
Yeah.
And it's funny because loudest ever to me was actually when they only sat 80,000, not when they sat 105,000, which is LSU
Yeah,
Tiger Stadium on a Saturday night. I saw the game between USC and LSU in the fall of 1979. John Robinson's number 1 team, Charles White, Marcus Allen in the backfield, Paul McDonald at quarterback. I mean, they were just loaded. Number 1, Charlie McClendon had a 3-2 team that made it to the Tangerine Bowl in his final year. The late David Woodley was playing quarterback. Steve Ensminger, the one-time offensive coordinator on the 19 national championship team with Joe Brady, with Joe Burrow, he was the backup quarterback. They split time at quarterback that year, and LSU had them on the ropes, had them down 12-10 with about 6 minutes to play, and they were totally outmanned. USC should have won that game going away.
Yeah.
But as they all say, the Fighting Tigers on the Bayou down there, they were just going nuts. And they actually had Mike the Tiger in those days. They put Mike the Tiger on the field in a cage right behind the away team. So to this day, Marcus Allen will tell stories to people. I know because Marcus and I were together at CBS when I was doing college and he was doing the NFL. Marcus will tell stories about how scared all the California guys were because not only was the Tiger behind them, but he was in a cage and they put a PA microphone next to the cage and it was just, oh my God.
Constant. Yeah.
Constant.
Yeah.
And the crowd was, and the smell of liquor in the crowd. In those days, I was doing a radio show. I was a cub reporter at the first job that I had in radio after I married my wife. So 1979, I'm 23 years old. I'm 1 year older than the seniors on that LSU team.
Right.
And they're all calling me sir, but and getting to watch Coach Mack and Bear Bryant coach in those days calendar's been very kind to me. But that's the loudest it ever was in a stadium for me. And now, granted, I wasn't calling the game, but I was on the photo deck right next to where the television booth was.
Right.
And it was just unbelievable. And I remember telling my wife after the game, I did a post-game radio show for the radio station I was with. And I told my wife after the game, I said, baby, I'm telling you, there's no way I can live without college football. This is the sport that I want to cover. It was in my blood before I got there. It's really in my blood now. I'll never, ever forget that. But the other places that jump out that people don't realize are magnificent, and there's several. Outson Stadium in Eugene, Oregon is by far and away the loudest of the West Coast schools. It's louder than Washington, even though Washington would have to be in the top 10. That's a beautiful facility. The setting is like a Norman Rockwell painting with mountaintops, snow caps. You got the yacht club with the water from the river out there, Lake Washington out there. It's just beautiful. But Oregon to me is the standard bearer for what used to be the Pac-12.
They're right on top of you, Tim.
They're right on top of you. It's like 55,000, but they're right on top of you.
Yeah.
And it feels and looks big and sounds big. And then the others in the SEC that just jump out at you. I mean, Tennessee and LSU are absolute gold standard locks. Got to have them. But I would certainly put, without question, I would put Bryant-Denny in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. They got to be considered in that same neighborhood. They got to be considered top 5. And of the Big Ten schools, Michigan is the bomb.
Yeah.
Michigan is the bomb. Ohio State is sort of a berries and cream crowd. It would be like, I'll use a basketball analogy because you guys are in North Carolina. The difference between Michigan and Ohio State's crowds are like Duke and North Carolina crowds in those two buildings.
Yeah.
Cameron Indoor Stadium only has about 9,000, and the Dean Dome has about 18, right? 19, 20,000. And it's not
a lot of penny loafers.
Yeah.
A lot of penny loafers up there.
Yeah.
I just, it's a little bit more. Until you show us something, we're not going to cheer crowd.
That's
Well,
right.
that's Columbus. Columbus
That's right.
fashions Ohio State as its pro team. They approach it like an NFL fan base, not a college fan base.
Right.
Michigan is Michigan,
Yeah.
and the Big House is undeniably the top of the charts in that league. I got goosebumps doing my first game there. The most overrated stadiums to me, Notre Dame Stadium is overrated. There are several that I think get a lot of love that are, to me, overrated. Now, I was happy to do that Notre Dame Pitt game with Vince Dooley back in '89. It was I think one of the last ESPN game that was televised at Notre Dame Stadium was that game. So I was happy to see Touchdown Jesus and hear the victory march as the teams came out, but it's not on the same level as Michigan, in my view, and those others I mentioned. And by the way, before you die, go to Michie Stadium in the Black Knights of the Hudson. Go to an Army game, especially if they're playing Air Force and another military academy. Man, oh man, you talk about feeling great to be an American.
Yeah.
That's got to get a. I put them just outside my top 5. I put them right around 6.
I've heard that one of our buddies have been and said it's just unbelievable. And you're right about Notre Dame. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan, but I always tell people when you go to see a Notre Dame game, it's more about the history and it's a special place, but it's not about loud. I was at Michigan when Michigan beat Ohio State to go to the Rose Bowl with Woodson and Greasy and those guys, and it was snowing and it was still loud. Not anything like the SEC schools, but it was loud. And the stadium's kind of tucked in the ground. The trees look like they're so tall, but they're not because you're down in the ground. And the cops are all out there dancing, and it was a really cool experience.
I would equate Notre Dame as Notre Dame Stadium as sort of the Fenway Park or Boston Garden of college football, the history. Yeah. And since they got all that NBC money, they put up these new, they've done so much with it to make it better. And by the way, the television booth is a lot better than it was in 1989.
Right.
They got a lot more room now than we did, but you can't see from your broadcast location Touchdown Jesus anymore like we could back in '89. That was part of it for me was seeing Touchdown Jesus beyond, that end zone. And now there are buildings in the way.
Yeah, it is. Tim, where can we see you over the next few weeks? I know now you probably got hoops coming up, I'm guessing. And where can we see you over the next few weeks on TV?
So I gather you weren't watching my Duke Michigan State game over the weekend.
I did. No, I did watch it. We had 3 TVs going. We're both big Duke fans. What a game that was, man! What a game that is.
Great win for Coach Shire. And man, oh man, Cam Boozer, he might be the best they've ever had, and that's a mouthful even for me to say. He's really, really good, and that's a great Michigan State team that they beat. They'll probably meet again in March. They probably will meet again in March. We've got Maryland on Saturday night, primetime hoops. We've got Maryland and Michigan at College Park on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And then the following Friday night, we got a Friday night hoops game. Jimmy Jackson and I have a good one. Going to play it at Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee. Villanova out of the Big East taking on Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. So those are my next 2 college basketball games. Then I'll get a couple of weeks off through the holidays and get back at it with hoops from January 3rd on. So
one final question for you. I just one, because I mean, all this talk about who our favorites and who's the guy that you like calling the games with the most? Who's the guy?
That's too hard to answer. I love them all. I mean,
who's the guy that you just bond with? Like, if I could do anything with this guy, I'd probably, because we butt heads, we have great chemistry, etc. But
right.
Who's your guy?
Well, I've been very fortunate in that I've never worked with an analyst that I didn't like. I've been very fortunate that way. And I don't say that just to be politically correct. I say it because it's accurate. But and I've worked with the biggest names in college basketball history calling
right.
games. Started with Vitale in '85. Bill Raftery also in '85 did my first Big East basketball game with the governor with Bill Raftery, and we've worked together at all three of my stops. I've been with Bill at both ESPN, CBS, and now Fox. And Jimmy Jackson, when he was playing for the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA, and I was hosting inside the NBA the late postgame show late at night after the playoffs. They would bring old former players in, guys that got not current players that got knocked out of the playoffs would come in and work with me in the studio. So in '95, 30 years ago, Jimmy was a player and he came in. I knew he was going to be in TV.
Yeah.
He was a natural and he's fantastic. I love working with him. And from Connecticut, along about the same time that Jimmy was playing, maybe a little bit later, not far though. He's maybe a little bit younger than Jimmy. Donnie Marshall is outstanding.
He is great.
He does a tremendous job. He was had a long time NBA career, was a second round pick, played for Calhoun on some of those great UConn teams.
Yeah.
I love them all. I really do. But I must say, without question, Billy Packer and Billy Packer, the time I spent with him on those ACC games, especially those Duke Carolina games, was a lot of fun. And also Al McGuire, when he was alive in 1998, we did the regional finals. We were together for that entire back end of that season. In the '98 season, I was 42 years old. The most memorable guy I ever worked with was Al McGuire, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
He was the Elmer Gantry of college basketball commentators. He said things no one else could say. It was his world, and only for a brief time could anybody be invited into it.
Yeah.
And as the great Dick Enberg told me, who worked with both Billy and Al, and I asked him, I said, what's it going to be like working with Al? He said, Tim, remember, it's his world, and a precious few get invited into it. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I had a tremendous ride with Al. They're doing a documentary on him, documentary film and a feature film that I'm going to be a part of in the next year. You know, coming up is 2027 will be the 50th anniversary of his national title at Marquette, when they had that unbelievable semifinal win and then won the championship, beating North Carolina, beating teams.
I'm a UNC Charlotte grad, so I'm all too familiar with that.
You remember that lead, that poor Lee Rose? That was a rough way to lose
Maxwell.
a game. But Al's no longer with us. So to answer your question, the guy that is the most enjoyable to work with today, that I still have the opportunity to work with, and it's part of it's because of the history we have together. The other part of it is I always learn something, and I'm always laughing, and I don't have to buy a drink afterwards. I mean, that's the whole win right there. That's got to be Raft. It's got to be the governor.
Oh, Raft, yeah.
Bill Raftery is a joy, and anytime you work with him, it's like, hey, all I have to do is call the game, give the score, and maybe just say something into or out of a commercial break, because Bill is going to fill the rest of it in, and there's nothing I can say that's going to be any more important than anything he's going to say. So we just have a blast when we work together. So in terms of just overall favorites, especially that are still with me today, it's got to be Raft.
That's a hell of a resume. And I know we said one more question 10 times, but I got one more, and then we'll let you go. But you did great. But I'll put you on the spot again. If you could call a national championship football game or a national championship basketball game, which one are you going with?
Oh, that's a mean question.
I know it is, but
because people will always say this to me. Which one do you love more? Because they know I love basketball as much as I love football. Yeah. And that's not always true with guys that do both college football and college basketball. But I really cut my teeth as a national broadcaster on the basis of how well I could call a basketball game. Mm-hmm. As much as I love calling football, and I've called a lot of great games through the years, I spent a lot of time during those years in the studio, which was also a very important job.
Sure.
It certainly gave me a lot of visibility. I think it helped me with my ability to stay in the business a long time. You know, I tell young broadcasters, you can't be a one-trick pony anymore. You got to be talented and versatile in some areas. Find a way to distinguish yourself as a broadcaster. And for me, I think probably the thing that distinguished me more, particularly with people that were looking to hire, was the fact that I could do as good a job in the studio as I could on a game.
Yeah.
And that helped me a lot. And I always wanted to be at the game. I was never totally happy when I was in the studio because you're sort of dodging landmines and you're always
Right.
having to go quickly and you're always on the clock to hurry up and get through because the game's about to start.
Yeah.
So I think in a lot of ways, football for me was my passion to do it every week. This is the first job I've ever had in network television where it's all I do. All
Yeah.
I do is call college football and college basketball now. And in the spring and summer, I chase 4 grandchildren and I chase golf balls.
Play golf. Yeah.
Grandbabies and golf balls. That's what I do in the spring and summer. But in
Yeah.
those early years, I was around the clock. I was doing College World Series. I was doing Major League Baseball, the NBA. I mean, I was working around the calendar like so many young broadcasters do. It's what you have to do when
Yeah.
you're cutting your teeth in our business. But I think because I have so much history in college basketball, games like Duke and Carolina in the regular season are like Final Fours.
Oh, yeah.
In that area. They
No
are.
doubt.
I used to tell people, for many fans, the college basketball season doesn't even begin until after Duke plays North Carolina the first time.
That's right.
And for about the last 20 years that those two played, between the early 2000s and 2019, when Raycom went away, I did that game, the first game every year,
Wow.
either with Mike Jaminski or Dan Bonner or Billy Packer.
Yeah.
So those were great years. If it were one or the other, I'd have to say basketball.
Yeah.
Final Four, and I got as far as the regional finals. And when there's only 4 broadcasters left when you're doing the regional finals,
Right.
so punching a team's ticket into the Final Four was as great an assignment as I ever had, especially the one with Al McGuire.
No doubt.
But a college football national championship is still mythical. Even with the committee, even with the playoff, we could argue on and on and on about who wins, who truly is the best team in college football. Basketball gets it right.
Mhm.
It's always gotten it right. Having a full-scale tournament, having teams have to go, and some teams based on seeding, you might get a great draw one year. And I would say a few times when Coach K got those 5 national championships, he had really good draws. But you know what? He earned them with a number 1 seed. So, that's part of it. That's part of what makes basketball great. Basketball is inherently a tournament game too. As a kid growing up, and I played basketball and baseball through high school. I gave up football to call football on the radio with my dad when I was 14. But I played basketball and baseball, and basketball is a tournament game.
Yeah.
And I think that because that's the case, for me, any championship game, whether it's in high school through the tournament process, or in college through the NCAA tournament or the NAIA or the Division II, a national championship is unreal. I did a lot of the Division II national titles. I did an NAIA national. Those were great moments for me because I knew how much it meant to those kids and to their parents.
Yeah.
From time to time, I'll get a message on Twitter from a parent that says, "Hey, I remember you doing this game, and I'm going to take you back in time." And it's a game between Auburn Montgomery and Grand Canyon College in 1987 or something. And I'm like, my God, when a parent or a kid is having a bad day, and they tell me they pulled out the old VHS or they converted it from VHS to DVD, so they could watch it again. That just warms my heart, really does.
I bet.
So the way you frame that question, I'd have to say a national championship in basketball.
Gotcha. Well, Tim, thank you again. I know I told you 20 minutes and we far exceeded that. So I hope the grandkids or the golf game, I hope we didn't hold you from that. But thank you so much for joining us. You've been great. You answered a lot of questions. And,
well, good luck editing this for television.
Well, don't let us go with this. Don't let us go as long as we want to.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Is he done? Is he gone?
He's gone now.
He was great. How long was that, Dylan?
Hour 14.
All right, so let's do 15 minutes on Panthers.
Yeah.
And then we'll be done.
Dude, I told you,
It's fucking great.
what the first part of that about college basketball needs to be heard.
About
College football, about how the inner workings and how the money.
He laid
how,
it out.
That was as clear cut as anybody that is questioning what's going on with college football right now and the reasons the decisions were made was 100% because of the way he just laid that out. ESPN, the ACC are in bed, and
SEC, Alabama.
and the SEC in Alabama, they moved from the timing of which he did it. He put the chronological order of why they moved Alabama in front of them and how they fucked Notre Dame and why they fucked them, because they needed to have the ACC in to represent them, because Notre Dame last year took all the money.
100%. I mean, that was totally what it was about.
Yeah.
And when I was following his tweets during this last couple of days, I'm like, what if he come on? And I used to know him very well, but it's been a long time. I didn't have his number.
I used to have him on I loved having him on because you'd ask him a question and he'd just go on forever. And it gave me a break.
Exactly.
Right?
You have to worry about.
I didn't have to think. But I was worried about having him on because we'd always have him on like 25 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic. And I text Hitman and I said, hey, man, do you have Brando's number by any chance? And he said, yeah. And he sent it to me. So I texted him, and when he said he would come on, I'm like, he'd be perfect because he knows his shit. He's a great interview, and he loves. Yeah, I mean, he's not one of those guys you have to pull shit out of.
No.
He's awesome.
He would have gone on for another hour.
Oh, I know. I mean, I wanted to. I had like 6 more things I want to ask him. I'm like, I can't keep this on. He's already been generous to give us that much time. All right, yo. So we'll come back. We'll do Panthers for 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Just tell me when.
You can dice that segment up and use that 5 or 6 different times.
So for TV
We talked-
podcast, I'm going to say the whole thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, for reasons of football versus basketball versus just having you can make 3 or 4 different podcasts.
Easily.
Oh, that one.
All right, you can start whenever.
Okay. Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. DJ the Suit Stout, along with Frank Garcia. Want to thank Tim Brando again from Fox Sports for joining us. He's always great and opinionated, which is what I like, because you know this, Frank, as well as I do. A lot of times TV guys don't like to really get too into the opinion piece of it. They want to kind of stay out of that. Tim has no problem doing that. He's as knowledgeable as anybody you're going to talk to. And thank you again, Tim, for joining us. That was fantastic.
And not only was it fantastic, he loved to talk, it was educational too.
Yeah.
You learned a lot about what was happening, what is happening in college sports, in particular college football, with the way the committee is comprised, and also the way that they came up with the decision.
Yeah.
And he chronologically broke it down, and you could literally follow the money lines of where he was taking you and why the decisions were made, and who was making those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I told him 20 minutes, and we ended up having him for over an hour, and I could have asked him 20 more questions.
The only thing I didn't agree with him on, there was only one thing, and it was just his opinion, was the reason why JMU and Tulane are in. I know it was the rules, but rules have been broken in multiple times.
They just couldn't break them this late in the game. That's the problem.
Why? They did for Notre Dame.
Well,
They did. That's exactly what they did.
Yeah, I mean,
So if you're going to screw anybody in the bigger picture, right? When you're talking about relationships and building, long-term healthy relationships where I don't have to piss people off, other than the people that really don't care, and that's Tulane and JMU, right? Nobody would have cared, not even JMU or Tulane. Their fan base.
Oh, they would have cared. They'd been pissed.
Okay, all 4 of them would have been mad.
Well, but here's the thing.
All 4 of those people
that's why
root for them
you go to
would have been
16
mad.
teams, you accomplish everything. You still have those 2 teams in. You still have Notre Dame and Texas and BYU or whoever it would be, Vandy, whoever would still be in. So
There's always going to be somebody you left out, though.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, listen,
And-
March Madness, every team has a gripe every year. Oh, we should have been in. We get no doubt about it. And you can't do it college basketball as now, where they created 16 tournaments to make sure.
Well, then now they have the piggybacks and they have the little play-in games and things like that. So they're always trying to create more revenue by adding more teams in a sneaky way and adding 4 more games. And that really having a field of 68, not 64. 64.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with college football over the next couple of years. There's got to be changes made. We'll see what they are. But Tim laid out the state of college football now and why we are where we are. Speaking of other things that are interesting, the New Orleans Saints did our Panthers a favor yesterday. Panthers on a bye week get a win because Saints go into Tampa Bay, beat Tampa. The Panthers and the Bucs are now tied in the standings with 2 games against each other coming up. Panthers have to go to New Orleans this Sunday, a team that whooped us here in Charlotte. Hopefully that was just a letdown, but they're playing a lot better. They won 2 of the last 4. The rookie quarterback Shuck is playing well. Tampa plays the Falcons on Thursday night. Would love to see the Falcons do us another favor. Not sure I would count on it. But the Panthers, for the first time this late in the season in a long time, have their destiny in front of them. If you beat the Bucs twice, you're in. Because the wild card's probably not going to happen behind too many teams with better records. But they can win the division, and they got to beat Tampa twice. And maybe some other things happen to where the last game of the year doesn't matter, but I don't foresee that necessarily happening. Going to the Saints this weekend, what do you think the Panthers' chances are to take care of business the next 4 weeks?
I mean, this is where we're going to find out the value of what Dave Canales offers a little bit, right? Because not only have they had a week off, they just beat the Rams going into this bye week, which nobody expected them to do. They shocked the world by doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They shocked, a lot of the football prognosticators saying that the Rams are the best team, and here comes the Panthers. What do we expect about the Panthers now? Going into a bye week, having momentum, how well of a job are you going to do through this bye week of keeping them sharp, keeping them hungry, and expressing to them the amount of opportunity you have in front of you, right? Because that's the Panthers control it. They control their destiny with what they do. And that's the only thing you can ask as an athlete, because there's so many things out of our control. We can control our attitude. We can control our effort. Now we can control our outcome if we have a great attitude and incredible effort and, go out there and compete in these games. Who's the leaders of this team is also what we're going to find out from the Panthers coming into, coming out of the bye week. Is Bryce Young, is he going to have the ebbs and flows? Is he going to be good Bryce? Is he going to be bad Bryce? Ted McMillan, he's a young player. How is he going to handle this bye week? A lot of these players going through this have never experienced this. And none of these guys on this team have ever experienced the pressure that they're going to be under of performance and winning these games, of controlling their destiny. They've always played, footloose, fancy free because they've never had anything to play for, at this level.
Yeah.
Bryce in college had that pressure every week. So should he be accustomed to it? We'll see. Yes, but it's not this level. I promise you, playing college football, coming to the pros, it's too complete. College football, your fans are going to be watching. NFL, everybody's watching.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because what I'm going to be looking for is a word that you and I use a lot when it comes to Canales and when it comes to Bryce Young. 2 guys that we both agree are learning on the job. They're gaining experience, but consistency is the word, because the Panthers are in this trend right now. They win, they lose. They win, they lose. They win, they lose. Bryce is good. Bryce is okay. He's bad. Canales calls a great game against Green Bay, calls a crap game against the Saints or whoever it is.
How I learned from not running the ball against Buffalo to we run the ball
against San Francisco,
San Francisco to we missed opportunities to running the ball against the Rams.
So with a bye week and a week to prepare, we're going to be healthy, right? So we had been unhealthy. We've lost 6 players in the last few weeks. We're going to be very healthy. J.C. Horn's going to be back. So to me, you're right. This is the one thing I'm going to look for is to see if this team, these next 4 games, can do what they haven't so far this season, which is just be consistently good. Let me put it that way, because they do. The Saints, we owe them one. They got us here. We owe them one. They are playing well. Their rookie quarterback's playing well. They beat Tampa.
They seem to have found something with this young quarterback, a confidence, a belief. And I can point back to several times in my career even that, you have a guy go down and the next guy come up and you're not really sure, but then you start building confidence and you start growing. Mark Bolger, for the St. Louis Rams, and Kurt Warner goes down. Kurt was our guy. I mean, we just got into the playoffs and he'd come out. We'd not done so well. We'd lost our first 4 games. Kurt gets hurt. Mark Bolger comes in and we win a game. And then we win another game. Then all of a sudden we start clicking on offense and we start having confidence in him. It seems like that's where the Saints are at with this.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Tampa yesterday. Last week at Miami, and Miami's now won, I think, 4 in a row. They had a 2-point conversion at the end of the game to try to tie it. So they're playing well. This isn't going to be an easy, as we know.
So
and we shouldn't think that anyway, because
the Panthers on the road, their record is not the best in.
But you're right. But if you look at the last 4 or 5 weeks, when they beat the Jets on the road, which is, we talked about a hurdle, which they should, but we didn't know if they would. But then they go to Green Bay.
9-6.
Then they go to Green Bay and win on
That
the
was
road.
a good win.
And so
That was a great win.
They've at least started building some confidence now that we can win on the road. We beat Green Bay in Green Bay.
When they won on the road versus when they've lost on the road, what's been the biggest difference? There's 2 things.
Well,
I can tell you, their defense playing lights out,
going to be first.
number 1, and running the football.
Running the football.
Right?
Yep.
Those are and I'll give you another third one. You have to bring your special teams as well. You have to make some sort of play with special teams in order to win on the road in this league.
Yeah.
Especially when you're not as talented as some of the other teams you're going to be playing. I think this is one of the games you can match up with the Saints and say, hey, we're equally as talented. They have some holes. We have some holes. They have a young quarterback. We have a quarterback that we're kind of growing and you're learning. And, it's time to stop making those excuses for Bryce. It really is. He's no longer a young quarterback. He's a veteran player in this league, and he needs to go out and he needs to control this team, and he needs to lead by example. And this team, if he wants to be the future of this organization, these are the games that he has to win. The games on the road where you're looking at an opponent, they're playing well, you're playing well, and we got to go and beat them.
You hear this analogy all the time, but I think it's 100% true right now. Is every game the rest of the way for the Panthers is a playoff game, and we said that about some of these college teams the last couple of weeks, and it is. I mean, the playoffs start this Sunday against the Saints, because if you lose against the Saints, now you're behind the 8 ball again. If you win against the Saints, regardless of what Tampa does, you still control your destiny. So the playoffs, as far as I'm concerned, starts this Sunday against the Saints. Then you've got Tampa here. Then you've got Seattle here, and then you're finished the season with
Seattle's
Tampa.
the best team in football right now. So
Seattle
defense
Rams,
is playing great.
Their defense is
The Rams,
awesome.
they are the best team in football. I'm not making that up. They are the best team in football right now, according to their record, which is what we go by at this league and this standard. Is where we are, is what your record says you are.
Yep.
And the Seattle Seahawks are the number 1 team in the NFC.
And we've got them coming here after the Bucs game next week. Tampa has Atlanta this Thursday night, at Carolina, home against Miami, home against Carolina. Miami, like I said, I think won 4 in a row. They're playing a lot better, so that's not going to be a walk.
I really don't even care about what the other teams.
That's my
as
point.
a Panthers fan.
We got to win our game.
I don't care who
our
Tampa
games.
has, who New Orleans has, who the Seahawks has. Is that if you're going to be a playoff team, you have to be concerned about who you're playing and what you do.
No doubt.
It's not about what everybody
No
else
scoreboard
does.
watch,
It's about what you do. And I'm knowing that's Coach Garcia coming out, talking to his players. We don't care who we're playing. We have to execute to our ability to do what we do. And that being said, this is going to be a big stretch to see if Bryce Young can carry this team, as I just said. You look at the national championship game that just played on a college level, where you're the 2 best teams, number 1 and number 2. Everything was equal.
I'm talking
about Indiana and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Everything was equal. Number 1 defense, number 2 defense. The number 1 quarterback in the country is number 2 Heisman quarterbacks. Everything was equal.
Yeah.
Why did Ohio State lose that game, and why did Indiana win? There's 2 reasons, right? One is that Indiana in that game was tougher than Ohio State. They hit harder, they hit longer, they didn't make mistakes, they were well coached. If everything is equal, but the biggest reason they won that game is because Fernando Mendoza made more plays and carried that team to victory. They rallied behind him. He got knocked the F out in that very first play of the game. And you know what? He laid there for a little bit, he shook it off. His brother came in and took a snap, and for the rest of the game, he's like, let's go, MFers.
Yep.
And he carried that team on his back. If Bryce Young, if the Panthers want to know who they have in a quarterback, because everything's going to be equal against the Saints, who has to play the best? Bryce Young, period.
Yeah, and that's
Bryce Young, period, has got to play better than a backup quarterback that the Saints have on the road to go up there and win. I'm not saying other things aren't going to factor, but if everything is equal, it's going to come down to, does Bryce Young play better? Because that's the difference between winning and losing games, and that's why that position gets paid the most money. That's why that position gets recognized for wins and losses, just like a coach, whether it's fair or unfair. This is the reason why you play quarterback in the NFL and why you are the number one overall pick, not a first rounder. The number one overall pick is so you could win games like this.
Yep.
It's incumbent upon Bryce Young. If this team is going to make the playoffs, he has to be the best player on the field, period.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why the consistency point with Canales as well. We need to be able to run the ball, like you said, because when Bryce is his best is when he doesn't have to throw the ball 35, 40 times. It's when we're running the ball, they can pick their spots. He can throw an accurate ball like we saw against the Rams, which I think the Rams game is a perfect blueprint of how Bryce Young can win this
That's
game.
right.
And we've seen him with the last drives and the game-winning drives and all those things. We've seen that he has that in him. I thought that formula against the Rams was the winning formula that they've got to stick with. They've got 2 running backs that can get it done. Chuba's healthy now, had a great game against the Rams. So I agree with you. So this Sunday, regardless of what happens on Thursday night, again, I will be rooting for the Falcons. But regardless, if we win 4 games in a row, we're in.
I don't want it to be easier. I want it to be every game flipping matters, and you have to win that game in order to go, because that's going to be for a fan. And I'm a fan of the Panthers. I play for them. I root for them.
Yeah.
I want them to do well. I want Bryce to do well. But I also want to have confidence that, okay, you know what? Those last 4 or 5 games, he showed, whether we win the Super Bowl or not, he showed that he's the guy that we can count on for the future. Because right now, I still don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's still up in the air. He shows glimpses of it, and you're totally right. And here's the thing. The Panthers being 7-6 this late in the season with getting to the playoffs in their own hands are further along than if everyone's being honest, they're further along at this point than we thought they would be.
That's right.
So now
Nobody thought in the world that they would beat the Rams.
No, nobody. Or Green Bay. So we're further along than anyone thought we would be this year. We also have an eye on the future because we do know we're still a lot of holes to fill to be where we want to be. But like you said, these next 4 games are going to let us know a lot about who should be on this roster, who shouldn't be. Is this quarterback the guy that can be the guy that for the next 5-10 years? Is this coach the guy?
I think that's the biggest question we have to answer, DJ. Right? It's not about this offensive lineman or that defensive lineman or this receiver or whether Leggett can catch or what. It is absolutely there's 2 things. If Dave Canales is the guy that is going to lead us and have us prepared to go on the road in a hostile environment where they're playing well, it's us against the world. Is he going to be the guy that rallies the troops and that we have confidence in? And is Bryce Young our guy at quarterback? Yeah. Those are the only questions I'm looking for this season for the rest of the season. I don't expect to win the Super Bowl.
Right.
I don't expect to go out there and make this magical run, like the Rams did, and win the rest of our games and catch fire. It'd be nice if we were in the conversation, if we won a playoff game or 2, if we got to but we have to get there first.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, you have to win against the Saints, period. This is a must-win game for the Carolina Panthers coming out of a bye week. If they don't, everything for me, I have a little helium in my bone. I'm starting to, you haven't heard me do this all year, have you?
Nope.
I'm starting to,
starting
to believe and pump my balloon full of a little bit of air. But if you lose to the Saints, all the air goes out, and we're right back to where we started from. We need to change our quarterback and potentially our head coach.
Well, we talk all the time this year about building blocks and hurdles that this coach and this team and this quarterback need to clear during the season. Winning on the road is one you brought up earlier we talked about. And they have. They haven't been consistent with it, but they have definitely jumped some of these hurdles. These next 4 games are, like you said, if you want to be a Super Bowl contender next year and the year after that and the year after that, you got to jump this hurdle. You got to win this game Sunday. You got to give Tampa hell here the week after, making the playoffs again. I didn't expect us to make the playoffs, so if we don't, I'm not going to sit here and say that this year has been a shitty year because it hasn't been. But
it'll be a lost year.
But that's something we've gained a lot. But what I will say is we got to answer the 2 questions.
We won't know who we are going forward.
We got to know is Bryce Young the quarterback and is Dave Canales.
That's right.
And right now they show glimpses of that they are. But then we take a step back sometimes and go, oh, what the heck kind of play call was that? Or Bryce, what are you doing?
And those are going to happen. And, I'm not saying that they have to be perfect. I'm by no stretch of the imagination saying that these guys but they have to find a way. And I don't care if it's a 9-3 game.
Right.
I don't care if it's a 44-40 game. They have to find a way to seal the deal, to move forward. It's win and move on, survive and advance.
Yep.
And it starts on Sunday against the New Orleans Saints at New Orleans, which is not an easy place to
You've
play.
always said it's
There's some
loud.
raging Cajuns. Ask
Yeah.
Tim Brando.
Yeah.
You know those drunk Cajuns out there. They'll be ready to go. I promise you. And that
Yeah.
dome can get
And
rocked.
they know the position the
They
Panthers
hate
are in.
them. This is going to have a rivalry atmosphere game.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw the game against Chicago and Green Bay.
I watched the whole thing. It's great.
That was a playoff environment.
It was.
I mean, the attitudes, the effort, the tenacity, the tenaciousness, the violence that people were hitting with in that game. That's what football has been built on, was that type of rivalry game. Same thing against Ohio State, Indiana.
Mhm.
Those were two heavyweights right in the center of the ring, slugging it out
Yeah.
and seeing who's going to be the last man standing.
Yeah.
Right. This is going to be that type of game, or at least it better be for the Panthers,
Yeah.
because if they go out there and get hit in the mouth and they fold like a cheap tent, I'm done.
We know it.
I'm done with them.
And Saints are 30th in the league in scoring, the 12th in defense. They beat us. We have an extra week to prepare. So this lines up to where you would expect this hungry, tough Panther team that we see sometimes to come out and punch the Saints in the mouth and the revenge factor.
They need to be the ones punching.
100%.
And if they get punched, they better step up and punch
back.
hard.
Yep.
Step up bigger.
Yep.
This is the type of player I was. I may have not been the biggest. I may have been the strongest. But if you hit me, you're going to unleash my pit bull, and I'm going to bite your ankles off. And you might knock me out. You might kill me. But that's what you're going to have to do in order to win, right?
It.
I am not losing. And it's the reason why I wasn't big enough. I wasn't fat. I was relentless in trying to win, and I was going to give 120% effort every single play trying to do that. And if the Panthers don't have that mentality going in this game, and you got people tapping out, get out the boat.
Yeah.
Not only are you going to get out the boat, if I'm one of the leaders of this team, I'm grabbing them and I'm throwing them out because you're not on our mission.
I need to call Coach Canales right now and have you give the pregame. You're getting me fired up right now. Like I wish the game was tomorrow. Guys, everybody, thanks for joining us. Big D, thanks over there. Tim Brando was absolutely great. You can see him on College Hoops with Fox. He said he's in Maryland, I think, Friday of this week. But he's always fantastic, and thank him again for spending as much time with us as he did. We'll be back Friday. We'll be breaking down the Carolina Saints game as well as some of the other big games. We'll also have some reaction from whatever happens on the Tampa Bay Falcon game on Thursday night. Obviously, we'll be talking about the college playoffs that are getting ready to roll. We're done with the Notre Dame stuff now.
Are you? Are you
I'm
okay?
done. It's in the past. Now you can be so far from the Panther game. I don't even care. I'm going to put my Panther hoodie on right now. But everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again Friday.